like hybrid thing. I want to make sure everybody's included. So. Hybrid.
Yeah.
I want to make sure everybody's.
I didn't touch it. I didn't even touch it.
All right. Thanks. Oh, hold on. Okay. Okay, we are. Okay, welcome everyone.
Where's a good place for me to go?
Welcome to the September meeting of the Sustainable Environmental Advisory Commission. We have some commissioners joining us here in person and some on Zoom. The first item on our agenda is an approval of the August meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Second. Second, anyone? Anyone? All right. Any corrections or changes, anything? That seems like a no. All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes from the August meeting?
Aye.
Okay. The ayes have. No. Everyone's- Okay, the next item on our agenda is we are finally officially welcoming our official trustee liaisons to our commission. One is joining us on Zoom and one is here in person. Ken Kuhn is joining us here in person and Ralph Klein is on our other trustee liaison joining us on Zoom. Welcome. We look forward to having you on the commission. And I guess we'll go around and introduce ourselves. We'll start with right next to you.
Mike Gershbein. This always throws me off for a number of years now. In recycling, a lot of other stuff, and grew up in Skokie. Lived in Skokie for a long, long time. Nice meeting you. Glad to be here. And you on the screen.
Oh, me?
Oh, Ralph.
Sure.
I'm looking at the screen. No, I'm saying.
Oh, right. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, as well. Do the virtual.
Good evening, welcome. My name is Jim Mcnellis. Been on the commission for longer than Mike. And been a resident of Skokie since 1995. My wife grew up here, family here, and you know, many interests in environmental.
Jenny Grossman. You know each other, but I am also a lifelong Skokie resident, and I've been on a commission longer than the last two guys, longer than everyone but Andrew, which I think was about 2013. And I've been the chair since then also. So.
Hi, welcome. My name is Emily Ogle. I have been on the commission for breaking the cycle for a long time than these guys since February of last year, February 2020. I've lived in Skokie for 4 years, and I have a master's in natural resource conservation. So I've been doing this my entire adult life. Well, environmental stuff. It's not
Yeah. Good evening. I'm Charlie Sachs. I probably talked to both of you on various occasions. I've been a resident of Skokie since 2003 and on the commission since 2014, I think, 2015 maybe, in around there. My angle is I'm a daily bike commuter to my job downtown, so I do cycling, but I also have a variety of other interests in sustainability and renewable energy.
Hi, I'm Bob Render. I'm a Skokie resident of 30 years, though I also grew up here, so probably in my 66 years, 6 years not living in Skokie. I've been on the commission, that is my second year, though it seems like forever, which is a good thing. Professionally, I'm a plastics recycling person, work for a large plastic distributor and run sustainability programs for that company. And welcome to everybody. And I just noticed that I'm listed as absent in the meeting notes, but I just noticed that.
Oh, yeah, I didn't realize, like I said, that's why I was double checking this time because it wasn't clear entirely as to sometimes when there's a hybrid thing, I didn't notice who's in attendance or who's not. So I can correct that in the,
I still like you.
Hi, I'm Rick Moskovitz. I owned A+ Pest Control on Oakton till December 1st of last year. We sold the smithy. We still make natural products, A+ natural enzymes, natural pesticides. We still make those. And I have been on the commission, I don't know, 6 or 7 years now, long time. Nice place. Thanks.
is my-
Over Zoom then?
yeah, is it my turn? I want to step on anyone's. Yeah, my name's Andrew Deconnier. I've been on the commission since July 2011 to be exact, so over 10 years now. And yeah, I kind of got involved because sustainability issues of environmental sustainability have long been an interest of mine. In fact, I write for an online magazine, and some of what I write about has to do with environmental sustainability, climate change, those kinds of issues. So among others. And yeah, I've been a resident of Skokie since 2007. So for a while now. My background is in communication, media, and theater, and a minor in political science. So kind of ties in with that too.
Okay, I'll go next. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm Libby Mahoney and a longtime resident of Skokie since 1988. And I've been on the commission 6-7 years. I've kind of lost track of the time. I'm officially retired, but currently doing some freelance work for the Chicago History Museum, where I worked for a very long time. So longstanding interest in the environment, and happy to see you here and join the club.
All right. Well, welcome both of you, and the next item on our agenda, or the next section of items, is some old business. The first of which is the refuse public listening session updates. Last month, we had set up a subcommittee to be able to work in more detail on talking more about what we're gonna do at this next meeting, which we will talk about at this meeting more, but also how we will put together the report that the village is looking for. And so that's myself, Emily, Jim. We had a meeting yesterday with Mcnellis to just go over some of the logistics of how this meeting would look. And it's going to be at our next regular meeting, so in October 26th. we will, it will be the first, if you guys get the Skokie e-news, the first publication already went out using that email yesterday. We're calling it a listening session, inviting people to come out and share their ideas on how we can reduce waste, how we can change the way we. Yeah. Wanna chime in?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea is to hopefully engage the public to see if they have any, as Max put it, imagines it, you know, if they can imagine any creative solutions so that we can have more efficient waste service. Yeah, we just basically want to.
Yeah, I mean, we're tasked as a commission with reimagining waste and recycling and figuring out how we can potentially cut costs. As we are aware and residents are becoming aware, there's going to be an implementation of the refuse fee starting November, which is just a reflection of the reality of the cost of waste pickup. And we've, as a commission, have been talking about these things for a long time and how we change behavior and how we change how we just improve the way people are people's waste and recycling more and all that good stuff. So it's not gonna happen overnight, but our first step is to put together some sort of recommendation for the village for our staff first.
Yeah. Yes,
Did you wanna?
yes. I want to talk. Where's my
Okay.
camera? Do you want me to turn the camera? So as Jenny said, we did meet with Antennas via Zoom yesterday and talk about it. So let me just go over a couple of the highlights and maybe a few of the things that we need to talk about or should talk about. So as Jenny noted, and hopefully all of you are subscribed to the Skokie News. So that email went out yesterday. That will be the first of 3 Skokie Newses that go out before the meeting. I should clarify that the last of those is before the meeting, as in the same day of the meeting. So the first one went out yesterday, the 28th. The next one will go out on October 19th. The last one will go out on October 26th. One of the things that is noted and is being publicized, and I'm trying to get it pulled up because I did not bring the hard copy of it with me today. I apologize, it stayed on the stack on my side table. But the one thing that we are pushing and advising people is that we will receive the public comments starting now. And so today we did begin receiving those public comments. And when those public comments are submitted, they come to Liz and myself. So we've begun to receive those comments. So that Skokie News, I think, went out last night, 5:30-ish or thereabouts. And so people are noticing, people are responding. The comments that we got today were about single-use plastic bags, single-use plastic bottles, styrofoam, once a week garbage collection. So nothing earth-shattering, but and people got the message, people are responding. And one of the things maybe we should talk about here in a couple of minutes, one of the comments was, would the village entertain broadcasting this listening session on Zoom or via some mechanism so that those who are so inclined as to not want to show up at an in-person listening session can have the benefit of at least listening to the commentary. And so I think that's something we'll talk through here in a minute. So,
Can I ask you
yeah,
a question about that? Sorry. Are these not going out on YouTube right now?
This is
this is, and so,
correct. As it stands, we are apparently we're an anomaly as far as commissions go in terms of being on YouTube. So that's something else that we were,
Why wouldn't the public session be on YouTube?
well,
As I
it's,
say, is this,
yeah.
it would seem like it'd just be this, where I'm on YouTube right now.
yeah, I mean, I think that's something for us to consider. I mean, as Jenny said, amongst the boards and commissions that are meeting, we are, as I've come to understand, the anomaly in that we are pushing this meeting out and live streaming it onto YouTube. There is no other board or commission that's doing that, as I understand. I didn't really understand that until yesterday when we were having this discussion, but we've been doing it, for the past few months. And so, we had talked previously with this commission about whether or not there might be a need for a second listening session. Maybe there might be a need for doing one by Zoom, and maybe the best way to literally accommodate the suggestion that was made today might just be to hold the regular listening session and just stream it out by YouTube so that people can literally listen to the comments. So that might be the best solution. And I don't see, based on what we've done for the last few months with this meeting format, I don't see why we can't just continue to do that. So I think we'll probably work it that way, because my sense has been, as we've had this discussion in past meetings, that I don't know that we're going to have such a groundswell of opinions to be offered that we need to hold two separate, listening sessions. So, but I guess we'll see what the commentary is that we receive from the public in that regard, in what we hear in terms of
But
comments.
just to clarify, we're talking about pushing it out on YouTube versus allowing the public to participate. Right?
As of right now,
Yeah. I mean,
yes.
that's- Yeah, right. But
Right.
that, it would be different with being able to listen in versus participating virtually.
Yeah,
And we're talking about the listening, not the participating.
right,
That was the request we received,
right. That was literally the request that we received.
listen.
So,
to listen.
so,
is
So-
our Zoom link or is it recurring? Is it a recurring link?
No, not yet. It could be, but I can also just keep going and make it an individual.
so that's sort of the publication plan. What we talked about was a hearing time between 7 and 8:30. We talked about, Jenny and Emily, Liz, tell me if anything I say is wrong. Just an FYI, the subscriber base for Skokie News is now 44,000 email addresses. So with a reported open rate of about 40%. So that's 17,000 opens on average for a push out. So 3-minute limitation on comments, which will be enforced by someone. There will not be the literal old village shot clock sitting there, which might be a turnoff to some people. In my generation, it would have been a thing, but maybe not anymore. But I assume time will be kept on an Apple device instead, but 3 minutes sort of for comment with the discretion of perhaps the chair or whoever else is moderating that to allow for some minor violation of that. Opening statements or commentary from staff and members of the commission. We will, I think we agreed yesterday that Ann and Liz and I will work with probably the subcommittee members to develop just bulletized opening comments. So we will work that, I think, in the next couple of weeks. Let's see. I think that really sort of hits on the highlights. Is there something else, Liz or Jenny or Emily, you think is notable?
As far as what we talked about, no, I think we covered it.
And I think in those opening comments from the commissioners, we will try and set and reinforce what sort of the tone of this listening session is intended to be about, which is, this isn't intended to be, this is not a refuse fee discussion. This is not necessarily a budgetarily driven discussion about how to alter a service delivery system. It is intended perhaps to be a discussion about altering a service delivery system, but it has an intention, given that it's in front of an environmental commission, is really about how do we see the future of this service delivery system, more so with an eye towards its sustainability, and where do we want to see this evolve in that regard in terms of minimizing waste, maximizing reuse, maximizing recycling. So that's sort of, I think, the framework that we want to try and set. And beyond that, I think maybe Emily mentioned it earlier, is really about seeing if we can gather comments that are sort of big picture, what's out there, what are residents interested in. Emily, did you have a
No, I
comment?
think that's a great summary, and I'm glad that you included this, this description that it's not about defending, the refuse fee or about hearing complaints about that, but more so like one thing that I did talk about on the call that I sort of want to reiterate is that I hope that we can make this a positive for the community participating in this together. Set that tone of encouragement and participation. Instead of being in the dunk tank seat, just, getting
Yeah,
shot at.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. One of the things that I put in front of you this evening that I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention is the village, as it does, I think, every 3 years, is getting ready to put out the 2021 National Citizen Survey. It is going in the mail to those folks who have been randomly selected by the program they use to receive this in the mail very shortly. I'm just going to read off of Antennis's email with regard to the survey very briefly. So this will go out and will go to those 2,700 households will have been selected. Of the total 2,700 households, 1,200 will receive the written survey, and 1,500 households that will receive postcards inviting them to take the survey online. Then, from approximately November 3rd through the 17th, a link to the survey will be posted on the village website for all residents to complete if they choose to. So that process is getting ready to get underway. What I have put in front of you tonight, if you're here physically, and if you're a Zoom attendee and you didn't check your email yet, check your email. I've sent you one page of that. It's page 4 of 5 from the survey. And I just wanted to call to your attention.
Sorry, Max, can I just interrupt for a second? Lisa is on Zoom, but doesn't seem to be showing up on our thing, and was trying to introduce herself.
See if I can get the Brady Bunch on.
Just make
She
sure
said
that
she
she's-
tried unmuting herself. And,
Wasn't working.
there she is.
There she
There she
is.
Hi, Lisa.
Yeah, we
Oh,
can't
we
hear
can't
you.
hear her.
Lisa, your mic's not working.
Yeah, it doesn't show you're muted, but
Just, we can relay this. Just say whatever.
Here's the chat.
Or if you want to use the chat box.
So I have while we're waiting for Lisa to work through her audio issue. So this survey asks, it almost implies that it's asking people for an opinion about whether to maintain a second pickup by increasing taxes or increasing fees. But the village has already decided to do that. So why are we asking people?
A couple things. The village has very limited ability to alter the fundamental setup of any of these questions because it's a national survey document. So we can't really alter the basic outline of the question. So we have a limited ability to change it. Having said that, the village has asked the twice per week refuse collection for at least, I would say, the last 3 surveys that we've sent out. Not probably all 3 of them asking it with that header on the columns, but we've always tried to engender a response about once a week versus twice a week pickup. Your question about the fee and the taxes is correct. I think the last go around of the survey, we did have a question that tied these service questions to the notion of, would you be willing to pay for it? I don't remember what the exact language of the header was. So yes, your point is right. We have imposed a fee, but certainly part of what I think we are getting ready to discuss here in the very near future is potentially the future of the second pickup. And so, however articulated here, this is an attempt to elicit resident feedback on how do you feel about the second weekly
So
pickup.
what has the communication been about the fee that people are gonna be paying on their water bills for refuse pickup? I may have missed it. But has there been any communication about that people being given it?
It went out in the
Yeah.
last municipal meeting.
Yeah, there's an FAQ that went out at least once. I would argue probably a few times. That FAQ document.
Put here, it certainly frames it as, there's a cost to that second weekly pickup. Are you willing to continue to pay for it? But it's never, what's come out so far from the village has never really been put as you're being charged because you have a second weekly pickup. It's just, there are costs to refuse and we have to pay for it.
People who advise explicitly that they're gonna be paying a fee starting whenever, in November,
Yes.
on their water bills. And it's gonna include a certain amount of refuse. Is that explicit?
It's gone on every refuse,
Yes.
or it's gone on every single water bill.
Okay.
You might want to open that chat. Well, I think Lisa.
And-
Curious.
Looks like Lisa.
Andrew,
Andrew, I think Andrew.
Lisa's ready to-
I don't want to interrupt. I just wanted to mention that in the last news Skokie that went out, the September-October issue, there actually is, I'm just looking it up on my phone here. And it actually does say also, it does address, there's an article on the second page. Villages fiscal year 22 budget meets economic challenges, and it does mention the new monthly fee. So there is some information about that there too, in terms of communication.
I've been taking calls constantly, like periodically, and
Yeah,
and
I just
also,
wanna make sure.
yeah.
It's just, I just wanna make sure that people know.
Oh,
that
no.
There's been a fee that's been assessed, that people know that that fee is gonna go up. Is that schedule of increasing it over the years?
that's
No,
not set yet.
well,
Yeah.
the village board has made no commitment to increasing that fee in year 2 or year 3. So,
Mhm.
The one other thing I did want to add is I did notice that there's also mention of a listening session that's coming up on the village homepage as well. There's that little part they can scroll through the different things that have been posted, and that's there too. So there's that means of communicating information about the sessions as well.
so if I can just, let me finish making the point on this, and then we can field all the balance of the questions. So this is intended to show you, these are the survey questions that are going to go out. There's 4 other pages of stuff. But this is the questions 13 and 14 are really the ones that we have any ability to make modifications to. You don't anymore. These are them, because it's going out. I think it went in mailboxes probably either today or maybe tomorrow. But this is just to show you some of the ones that reference some of the sustainability subjects. Some of them are difficult to articulate. We had a heck of a time trying to write the last one on 14, implementing community-wide food waste collection / composting program. I challenge you to write and describe that program, given the limitations of that length of line, and have somebody understand what it means, because I'm not quite entirely sure what it means, but It's an attempt to get a gauge on, is anybody interested in this? So we wanted you to be aware of those, okay? The data from this survey, tell me if I'm wrong, we asked, and second week of December, we should be seeing data results back from this. So kind of ties in with some of what we'll be discussing, and we may get a flavor for what some of that data says. Just so you are aware of it, so that you don't go home in a week and a half and get this in the mail and say, why didn't Max tell me that there was going to be a food composting question on survey question 14? So I wanted you to be aware that's out there. So the meeting listening session will be on October 26th. As I said, we've given it an hour and a half, which means if we had nothing else to talk about and we sat here, that means you have to sit here for an hour and a half on the 26th.
Oh, so you don't need to show up at 7, you show up anytime. That would comply.
Well, if we advertise that it's a listening session, which we have, and we say it's 7 to 8:30, yeah, we need to be here from 7 to 8:30, or at least enough of us do, and to be here to receive those comments. So the question that we were talking about a little bit, I think, on the call and earlier today is, do we want to accomplish other business during that time or after that time? And I think Jenny astutely observed that you guys normally seem to be here till 9 or slightly thereafter anyway. So I'd say that's an open question for tonight, since it is your regular meeting date. So I don't know that you absolutely have to answer that question tonight, but I will put it to you as an open question.
I
So,
guess if we get a good amount of people here, maybe we can spend some time doing a little bit of post meeting.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll see as we get closer to that next meeting, what's kind of what we're working on at the time, and put that on our agenda as a backup.
yeah, I mean, I think we'll have a flavor for the interest level as we get closer to it.
Max?
Yeah.
Next, it's Olivia. What do you plan to do with the feedback?
Could you repeat that, Libby?
Yeah, what do you plan to do with the feedback?
Yeah, good question. So we will then meet. I don't know if we want to meet first as a subcommittee. I think that's probably the case. That's what we discussed yesterday. So we'll probably meet as a subcommittee to sort of take the comments that we have received in that listening session and sort of group them or organize them by theme, or start to put them in some format so we can organize it into some form of report. And then we will need to be able to transmit that in some manner or form, either to the village manager and or to the village board. What we discussed the other day was, I think that the public comments to me should then inform the work of this commission versus necessarily being some large standalone document that goes to the village board. Not that the village board can't see or shouldn't see these comments, but I think, my expectation is that it might help inform the work of this commission as you begin to consider what these different options may look like for potential for changes to, our refuse system and program ideas that may come out of it. So to me, I think that's the important takeaway.
Well, ideally, this reinforces what we're doing. I don't think anything will come from, who knows, but nothing will come from Mars, presumably. A lot of it, we're residents, we're on the same page. So looking at that way, it's kind of giving more kind of pressure behind stuff we've already been trying to do.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Will residents have access to that report? Will it be made public in any way?
Oh, I certainly think so. Yeah, I mean, it will ultimately be a work product of this commission. So yeah, for sure.
Just to make it clear to people who are commenting that that's what you plan to do. I think that's the point I'm trying to make is I'm sure you know this, you have to let people know what happens to their comments and how then they can see their impact and actually read the report.
Yeah, then if we,
Yeah.
when we present it to the village board, it would be in the agenda, that report would be,
Yeah, public document.
yeah, it would
Yeah.
be given to the board members beforehand, so it would be in that agenda package.
And I think that managing expectations.
Exactly, right,
I
right.
mean, you know, I mean, we've been for years talking about how it would be great to have recycling 2 times a week and trash pickup 1 time a week. I think probably, if everybody here agrees on that, you know, and the fact that somebody from the public comes and says that that's a great idea, they shouldn't necessarily expect that that will be implemented.
Mm. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. All right.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Nothing else, Charlie, that you wanted to-
No, I'm good. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I think it'll be good to hear from people. I'm a little concerned about that this qualification that it informs our work, but wouldn't necessarily inform, you know, the director to the board. I think the whole point is people are coming in to talk about a policy concern. And I'm not sure I am convinced that there's really much meaning to it. Certainly, if I was a resident that was not involved in this, and I was asked to, you know, looking at giving input, but it was just going to go to the advisory commission and not necessarily be something that would be forming policy for the village, and I'd be skeptical.
Explain to me why you have that perception. I'm not sure based
You
on the
just said that
comments I
it's
made to
something
you,
that
why you would
you
take
just
that.
said it would inform the work that we're doing
Yes.
and not necessarily be something that people can expect to be directly considered by the board. That's a pretty explicit statement.
Well, if that's the way you construed that statement, that's not my intent. I am saying to you that the public comment that you're receiving is, in fact, in my opinion, is to inform the work that this commission's been asked to do to make a recommendation to the village board. I think that's entirely accurate. So this commission's been asked to make recommendations to the village board. What you choose to do with the public commentary that you're receiving on the board's behalf, I don't want to presuppose what you will choose to do with that commentary, Charlie.
Right, so I think there's okay, so that's a good clarification. I think there's an important distinction about the whole process. This is something that we would then process and then make a recommendation based on public comment that we can make a recommendation to the board. You know, I think that looking at the performance of the sustainability plan, how the board has viewed that, certainly in recent decisions, I think there are a lot of people that are very skeptical about that relationship, and understandably so. And I think that you know, that's something that we need to just be cognizant of.
And I think that another kind of compounding issue with this, I don't know that people necessarily know the role of the boards and our role, in that it is an advisory thing. And I've seen, you know, spend a amount of time online, see occasionally things, why weren't we involved with this, or why aren't we involved with that? People bring it up. And that's just not the role of the board. So, you know, if people come here, they need to understand what it is they're suggesting, and also, and they could go to a board meeting, like the village board meeting, and raise their concerns about this. Like, it really, you know, want that to be heard. So it is going to be filtered. I do think, once again, managing expectations, what it is that we can do, that we do for church.
In this case, the board is actually turning to us to advise them. Our complaint is often that they don't do that. And in this situation, they are asking us to advise them. We are then turning to the public to get input. Obviously, everything, I mean, if the point of the listening session was just to, you know, verbatim write down what people said and then turn over to the board, they wouldn't need us. I mean, they could have, anybody could facilitate a listening session. The reason that we're doing it is to take those comments and mesh them with what we're doing, putting together a report. And maybe there'll be a section of the report that focuses more on public comments and talking about, this was a very common thing that the public said. There was also this, maybe we didn't go with this because we thought this was more something, as a commission, we thought this was more appropriate, whatever, but we can still talk about those public comments to report that to the board, and ultimately it's up to the board to make the decision that they make. Also to report to staff based on, and then they report to the board. But this to me seems like we are really doing our role as advisory commission, which is pretty good.
Yeah,
Point though, like that's not gonna happen, at the next board meeting after.
No, but
And I think that might be something that I think Max, that's what you were trying to say. This is not an immediate process, so it's immediate. And we also
Yeah.
need to ensure that, the recommendations that we come up with are feasible. And then to give them the opportunity to frame it in a way that makes sense to take to the board.
right, but that, I'm not disagreeing, I'm saying that that's why we're not, if we just present people's ideas to the board, that's.
Yeah, and they need something to
that's
actually
what I
vote.
like.
They need a tangible plan to actually vote. Can't just vote on it.
What's the expectation? I'm sorry.
I know, I'm done.
What's the expectation of when the feedback is going back? A month, 2 months, 6 months?
Well, I know, there's,
And then the expectation, we take the comments, so people know what the timeline is between the time to give us the comments and to make the recommendation.
Let me answer that. I mean, I think the original ask or direction from the village board was in my estimation, was tied to the village's operating budget process. The thing I think I've consistently tried to convey to this commission about that was, in normal circumstances, the village's operating budget process internally can be expected to commence at the end of December. And so the sort of the fundamental tension, if you will, between the assignment given from the board when we had a later budget process in this prior fiscal year, juxtaposed against our normal, or what I assume to be our normal fiscal year process this year, is we had a very constricted period of time. And if we were in a position to consider very large different changes to the waste system, which, should there be, let's say, a large groundswell of support for curbside food scrap composting, I submit to you that is probably not a simple programmatic change. It is not insurmountable, but it is not a snap your fingers and it's changed. So I think the staff, and talking with you folks about this in the last few months or since we were given this assignment, looking at the time sequence of events, knew this is going to maybe be longer than maybe some of the board members might have thought that it was going to be. Long-winded way of saying, I have no issue with transmitting the reports or comments of the public as soon as reasonably possible to the village board, or the work or thoughts of this commission as soon as possible. My concern is having a well thought out solution to the interests, or responsive to the interests of this commission and those members of the public, such that I can present it as a service alternative, well thought out and vetted to the board in time for a normal budget process. I'm just saying we will be severely crunched for time. I'm happy to report the information, the commentary, the thought, the feedback, and all of that to the board whenever anybody would like. I'm just concerned about having it as a well-drafted, crafted budget proposal that's actionable. Those might be two different things.
So is it reasonable to say that the timeline for this is we collect these comments, we then deliberate we make a recommendation by the end of the year that the board then can consider in its budget considerations, and you can consider in terms of your operation.
Yes, I think the board
So,
is,
so when we're communicating, when people show up, ready to make a comment, we can say, hey, this is the deal. We're collecting these comments to get a sense of what the priorities, what the interests, what the willingness to engage in a particular program would be from the public. We're going to then process that based on our role as an advisory commission, make a recommendation to the board by the end of the year. And the board will consider that. The board and staff will consider that in terms of an operational and budget recommendation for the next fiscal year.
yes, I think that's fair. I mean, we'll certainly be expected to make an update to the board in the budget cycle. There's no question about that.
Next, I'm so sorry, but can you remind us of the fiscal year?
It's a May 1 fiscal year.
Thank you.
What about tying this into the next sustainability plan? Dates in there, but, yeah. Year round.
Well,
And that's what what's advising.
is it potentially tie in? Yes. I mean, I think so. I mean, I'm sure one of the goals in a sustainability plan is going to be, right, it's going to be waste minimization. I'm sure there's going to be goals in there about, food scrap and some of these types of programs that we're talking about. So, I mean, I think the likelihood is there's going to be support for alterations to our current waste system that are going to be hand in glove with goals that I'm sure will be in the next sustainability plan. But sort of the time sequence of events as it looks like right now, with the sustainability plan is going to be, delivery of the GHG inventory, which end of October into November, and then it's the planning process with this group for that and the development of that plan. So it's a lot.
Yeah, my main interest is when somebody comes and makes a presentation that they feel like they're making a substantive contribution. That's what I want. And I want to be able to communicate to them honestly and straightforwardly what their role in this process is, what our role is, and what our role is. But, somebody's going to make the investment. Come in and make the comment. I want them to be clear about what it is that's going on. And how that fits into the process.
I just gonna say, I don't want to interrupt, but yeah, I mean, I think that overall, when you take a look at, from our discussion and from what we've discussed before, I feel like, it's at least the beginning of the whole thing seems to be pretty well fleshed out. And I think it's probably a good thing in a way. I guess, as I understand it, it's kind of going to be, it sounds like it's phase 1 and phase 2 kind of with preliminary sort of recommendations and that sort of thing. More like sooner rather than later, but I guess you said that really the bigger changes sort of to the program likely would be, you said, fiscal year 2023, right? Like, and you were actually talking, I think, about how that would be around the time we have to rebid anyway for services. So it does seem to dovetail nicely in that sense too, because like you said, it would be an ideal time to make any significant changes. Probably, you would be able to speak to that more than I, but it seems like it works out well.
Yes, that's correct.
So you could use fiscal year 2022 to plan for those changes in 23 and maybe allocate some funding that way?
Yeah, what Andrew's referring to is that the recycling contract that the village has currently, we are in a series, it's 2 one-year extensions that the board has approved that will take us to the village's fiscal year 23. So put it in layman's terms, we have about 1.5 years remaining under contract with Lakeshore for the current single-family recycling contract. And when that period ends, we have no more contract extensions remaining with Lakeshore. And we will have to go to the marketplace and rebid or renegotiate a new contract in its entirety. And so, because I think we will probably end up as an outgrowth of this discussion, I'm imagining people are going to want to talk about, should we have potentially a different recycling frequency? Should we have different toter sizes? Should we do some different things with that service? The village owns the recycling toters. We have for many years. It has always in the past been very easy for the village to change service providers because all it required was a new service provider to show up with trucks and people. They didn't have to bring in new toters and take out the old toters out of the town because the village owned them. For us to entertain some of these other ways of doing business that involve different toters, you have to go buy toters. And they're talking about 20,000 toters that cost $47 to $52 a piece. It's not an insignificant capital cost. And so typically the way in which a municipality would deal with that capital cost is when they enter into a contract with a provider. They have the provider buy the buy the toters, and then the village would pay the cost amortized over the term of the contract as a financing mechanism, yada, yada, yada. Also helps with the logistics of deploying the carts and all those things. So there are a lot of reasons why, if we were going to make a significant system change, the time to do it is when you are making a significant change with the contract, either the contractor or the terms of the contract, so that you can maybe make a whole bunch of other changes since the contract is up anyway. And so that's what Andrew is recalling from the prior discussions, is that's really sort of the natural time period when we're in a position to really pretty easily entertain a lot of changes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like I said, it seems to work out well because there's a lot of time, there's, I think, ample time anyway, to analyze the feedback that we get from here, organize it, present initial recommendations, and then maybe delve more deeply into what it is that we would like to do specifically, like you said, with programmatic changes, like you said, the following year. So it does sound like overall, I think it's a pretty well thought out program, or, study, if you want to call it that.
One comment. And I just had a comment, because, Charlie, I've been taking a lot of the refuse fee calls and so forth. I haven't had one angry person, and I've actually been just astonished that that's not the case. So the calls that I've been taking are generally just asking, why, like, what's up, why, and they're very aware that other municipalities are also charging a fee. They're just kind of asking, what was really the tipping point for us here, those kinds of questions. And also the public comments that have been coming in for, for the waste reduction have been excellent. Again, like just a really nice tone to the emails. They've been just really helpful. And so I think that's a really good sign, just starting the project. If I can, just set everybody at ease for the actual event, it's started off really well. So.
I would expect that most people are going to probably be cool. There's probably a couple of people out there that are going to go off on their whatever conspiracy theory or something like that. But I do want to just, it's a matter of just clarity when people are making statements or people are approaching this or this whole process. There's an understanding of how the process works and what their input is, and that we can keep it a constructive process. I think that's the ultimate goal, is like, okay, given where we are and what we're dealing with, what is the progression moving forward, and what do people feel is their participation? Do they feel like they've got to have more recycling? Are they okay with the additional garbage pickup, or would they like different things, and what are they willing to pay for? I mean, I think you ask people to pay for something they feel like they're getting value, they're willing to pay for it. And just so that we can have a constructive constructive conversation about that rather than like them feeling like they're being asked that there's, I want to avoid a situation where there's a sort of cynicism going into it. And that's, I think.
Yeah.
what we're
And
talking
my personal experience is also, and I've said this before in many other meetings, is if the marketing information comes directly from the village, there's only a certain percentage of people that, might kind of take us up on our offer. And so I would just encourage, if you have a neighbor that is also kind of environmentalist, or a church group or the synagogue, or getting kind of some of those grassroots invitations out there and kind of telling them about it in the public. I think that sets the stage for exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, cool.
I would just add that, I don't think we can make promises to anybody who comes here and say like, yeah, all these ideas are gonna go through. We can't. But I do think that this commission wants to have a level of comfort that the village is gonna be receptive to our report. And to take it. I think that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I mean,
From my fellow members.
Well, I think somebody had mentioned, I think Michael had mentioned, people aren't sure what the role of these boards are. So we present ourselves as an official body. People may feel like they're making a statement to an official body that's going to make a decision about this. But as long as there's some clarity about that, and that it's more about an informed discussion rather than a direct input to a decision. That's good.
So I think we can comment on the report, on the terms of residents in terms of what we've been discussing, but also we have an opportunity to advise the board and help the board ask the right questions in the process of selecting a new recycling vendor or retaining the current vendor. So questions like, how do you share the revenue from recyclables, which we don't do today. So I just think we have that opportunity also to advise the board on what to put in the RFP, for the recycling.
Is that the board that does that, or recycling list? I'm sorry, not this.
we'd be this startup.
Yeah.
So then
Mhm.
okay, but
Yeah.
They take the results of the RFP to the board and say, this is what we want. Decides whether to approve it. Right?
Yeah, that's correct. But we're absolutely open to having discussions on that, so.
Okay, I think we have a lot to go on. We'll be meeting the 3 of us, 5 of us, whatever, in between now and this listening session. And of course, if anybody has things they want to, ideas, whatever, feel free to reach out to any of us. And we want to make this useful and as productive as possible. Okay. Next item on our agenda is an update on the Backlot Batch Zero Waste event.
Yep. So Arlene Howard did email us, and there was a ton of food waste that was sorted and harvested and sent for composting for the event. I'll just comment a little bit on the volunteers. I did send the opportunity out to the high school and to Go Green, to this group, and then we also did an e-blast. And we really struggled to fill the slots this year. Some might argue COVID, and I would argue that people are kind of also aware that you're sorting funnel cakes and chicken wings in 95-degree heat with a mask. So it's not like possibly like the best volunteering experience, but so we're really grateful for the people that did help. But I can see that, it's going to be a challenge to continue getting these volunteers. Bob volunteered this year. We are going to have a follow-up meeting with Arlene I thought Bob had some great ideas of maybe monitoring the different receptacles instead of actually having to sort everything at the end. And yeah, I think there are some changes that could be made to make it more volunteer friendly, more visible. It was the first year that I've kind of seen the process, and right away the Rotary breakfast kind of comes to mind, and Erlene was on the same page with that as that just being a really good target audience of people that good like community members out and aware of what's going on in the community, to get the message out about composting. And so Bob, I can't remember when that meeting is. I think it might be next week or the week after.
Yeah, that's the sixth.
Okay. And so I would anticipate a good meeting and lessons learned and some changes for next year.
Was it affected by the rain?
Now I'm not remembering rain. I'm remembering heat and wind,
Rain.
but
Yeah,
That's so.
Saturday.
That's like, can't imagine the ski canceled.
like off and on, right? Every half hour. It's okay, go inside, go. Well, there, you probably
Oh,
saw
that's
some
right, yeah.
social media shots of people in crowded inside Village Hall and beer cups. And rumor has it there was a dog sitting at the mayor's chair, but don't tell the mayor if he didn't see it yet. So yeah, it was constant all weekend, rain, not rain, rain, not rain. So
some questionable stains on the carpet.
Hey, Liz,
Yeah.
should I send the email I sent to Jenny and let her distribute it, or should we just wait for it to come?
I think we should, yeah, if we have the meeting first and then,
Okay.
yeah,
That's fine.
we'll see what happens. So
It's
the park
October
district,
5th.
you will give the park district opportunity to comment and see how things went from the operations standpoint. And, yeah, I think that would be a good timing. So that's a wrap for back lot. And then the next item on the agenda is the greenhouse gas inventory. So if I've been having a low profile lately, it's because I literally locked myself in my office to try to get some of this data in. And I think we're pretty good. I expect a little bit of back and forth with Delta, just saying that they need more, or I sent the wrong thing, or that type of thing. But it's pretty much in and on their plate, and we're just waiting to hear back from them. So we're pretty much on schedule for that. So that's what all the updates I have for old business.
Thank you. Okay, on to new business. First up is farmer's market, which we had previously discussed as our date would be November 7th. And just to go over who had said they could be there. Charlie?
Go ahead.
Just for those of us that have heard
Yes.
it.
Yeah, in the past, we've been at farmer's market. We've had a presence at the farmer's market past, not recent past, but like the table at the farmer's market. That date is also the pumpkin composting date, if some of you are familiar with that. It's when you can bring your pumpkins and they put them in a big dumpster and they get composted. So we thought that would be a good thing to have us there. I guess we'll be by the dumpster.
Yeah, we can talk about that. You could be in that parking lot.
Where
A
people-
lot of people come to that site to
Yes.
get their pumpkins, and there are people that are interested in composting. So I think that would make sense to be near.
Will it be in the parking lot?
It's going to be in the parking lot across from the farmer's market. And
Right.
so
So where will people park?
it's
Not at-
that's a good question. We used to have 2 lots. I was anticipating that there would probably be enough parking there, but we might have to think through that a little bit, because that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a little less parking than normal. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that would make the most sense for where we would put a table for you, because that's where all the composters are
Yeah.
congregating
And
together.
a lot of people park there, so we get a lot of people.
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah. And then I also purchased a compost bin. And so we're going to be raffling that off, or you're going to be raffling that off. So I'll get you a raffle drum or a box or something. And that's just one more thing to bring people in and start talking about composting. To give you kind of a good venue to start the conversation. And, and it's not going to rain, I promise. It'll be fine.
It was that. It never rains in November. So Charlie had said he would be there, and we can set a parameters for when we want to be there. I'm not gonna suppose for 4 hours. We don't need to, we probably want to do it the whole time. But and you don't have to commit now, but sit there for an hour or two and talk to people.
I wish I could.
Um,
No, this is, I would have definitely done it.
okay,
I'd like to.
anywho, so that's that. But if you can commit to some time on that, day, that would be great.
In the hour.
Well, the farm rep is 7:45, 12:45, or 8 to 12:45.
Yeah.
Probably we would want to do like, I don't know, Kelly, what are you available?
I could be available at any time. Obviously hanging out 5 hours would be a bit of a stretch. Whatever makes sense to. I don't know what's been done in the past. Whether there's a segment of time like bring a pumpkin in.
The pumpkin composting takes care of itself. And so we just have the dumpster out there with some signs, and
Okay.
people, sometimes it's even delivered the day before, and people are like, see it and they'll stop by. So you don't have to worry at all about
Okay.
managing.
Just,
that.
just let me know.
Yeah.
I can work. So,
Yeah, I can volunteer. I'll be there.
Oh, great. Olivia.
Yeah, 9 to 11. Does that sound good?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
as long as we're not expected to wear the pumpkin so they can take a picture.
At your discretion.
Don't bring any zucchini.
No zucchinis, okay.
Be there in the morning. Later.
If you can be an hour,
How late is it go?
12:45.
Yeah, it's morning, so 7:30 to 12:45, it's 5 hours.
Okay. I'll probably send one more email out closer to the event. The refuse capstone project. So I got one of the infamous emails from Max. Are we looking for a capstone project? I said sure, and again had to lock myself in my office for another couple days to finish getting the data over. So UIC has agreed to work with us, and we were kind of saying, well, what don't we know about our program? And so what we decided to do, we had to come up with it really quickly because they've got one semester to finish the project. Otherwise, we certainly would have brought it forward, but we turned around everything in about a week. So what we're going to do is we're going to send some data collectors out. We have selected random samples of single family or small multifamily that are serviced by the village. And we got to thinking, we don't really know the set out rate for recycling. So we don't really know if everybody's participating in our recycling program or not. So we're talking very basic information. We're just going to go out and see, are people setting out a recycling toter? And we're going to do 2 consecutive weeks of the same addresses. And then we're going to flip the toters and see if it's 25 or 0, 25, 50, 75, 100, or over 100, meaning they've got their recycling toter, maybe a box of cardboard or something like that next to it. So just getting that basic information. And then the second part of the study is we're going to be pulling recycling toters, bringing them back to our yard, and Lakeshore has a new sustainability coordinator. And so she's going to be working with us to correctly identify what the contamination is for future marketing. What's going on in Skokie specifically, and what are the big contaminants, and how can we educate the public better on that.
That's really interesting question, by the way. I'll be interested to hear that.
Yeah, it's such
I
basic
think
data.
This sounds like a really, really good thing to do.
Yeah.
Is that about like what not to put in?
Yeah, and what right, exactly. So what not to put in. And then I had wanted to do the same thing with the refuse at the same time, kind of flipping it on its tail a little bit and saying, how is our refuse contaminated with recycling? Because I think there's 2 sides of that story.
Going through the.
Right. Yeah, and we will be, but we weren't able to do it in the same study because the routes of the trucks are different. So Lakeshore is running a route, one way, and our trucks are running a route a different way, and you have to stay ahead of the trucks the day of. And so it's just not going to work out this semester, but it's certainly something that we want to, as a second look at, and maybe before we make some big
Are you
changes.
gonna be asking us to volunteer to crawl around and start?
No, we've got some paid volunteers, and I'll be one of them. Actually, I'll be digging around and some recycling.
Get paid $1,000 a week to do that.
I also used
Not
to
a
do that
joke,
in
not joking at that.
Okay.
identity factory for a living.
Liz?
Can one of us observe the sustainability director?
The
doing this?
contamination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah. So I can send out the date of when she's going to be
Okay.
here.
What's her name?
Her name is Joy Rifkin. She's got a really interesting background. She did some solid waste work out in New York. She's also like a grade school teacher, and just has been like really outgoing and very friendly and willing to help as soon as she came on board. So I think it's going to be a neat project, and it's been taking a little bit more time than what I would have liked, but I think we're going to get some really good basic data.
And just
from it.
one quick comment.
Yeah.
If you do the waste study, you should call it a lost opportunity study, because recycling don't contaminate the refuse. They're just not collecting it, so it's a missed
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a couple questions. Are you, sorry, when they look in the recycling, are you also proposing that they'll look in the trash to see like if this household has full recycling and full trash?
That's what we wanted to do. So as Max and I were talking, I'm really curious because I don't know if you remember Josh. This really stuck with me when Josh was talking, that the North Shore have higher recycling rates, but only because they also have higher refuse rates.
Right.
And so in my head, I've always thought that if you have a high recycling rate, you're going to have inversely proportional. So,
Yeah.
that's maybe not necessarily the case, but we can't do that with this study because the routes are
Right.
run differently. So we can keep those addresses and, pull the same addresses, but we're going to have to reroute
On
everything.
different days, right?
Yeah,
Different
yeah.
weeks.
It's just not going to.
And then also when you're talking about doing the contamination loss missed opportunity study, are you pulling actual individual toters from individual households, or are you looking at entire truck?
No, it would be the individual addresses. I think we would keep it, but just to be clear, I'm already overcommitted on just getting the recycling one done, and so the refuse one is in the future.
Yeah.
It's like it's a dream. So
No, that's cool. Yeah, but so you're actually gonna be looking at very specific individual addresses and not an entire truck.
yeah, we pulled data points. So what I did is Lakeshore gave us their routes. And then another thing we're going to be looking at too is we specifically chose routes to see if there's any difference between alley collection and curbside for the set out rates. So
You're not
How-
trying to demographics.
no, there's a lot. I mean, there's so much information about that already, and we wanted to learn something unique about our system that we didn't know.
So for people who have alley collection, because their cans are already out, will you just be counting set out as if there are things in there?
Both. So we've got. I'm not 100% sure that people keep their recycling out, or I think some people at least keep their toters in their garage. So we're gonna say, is the can out? Yes or no. And then also the 0% would be the next, metric that would be, quantifiable.
Liz?
Yeah, at least I have everything.
Liz? Can you guys hear? Oh, yeah. For the contamination rate, doesn't Lakeshore already know that? Don't they fine us, or don't we have to pay for the contamination? Don't they already know the answer to the contamination?
I would say it's not just about quantifying it, it's also about qualifying it, about seeing, what is our contaminant and, how can we better educate the public. And I wouldn't say that we get great data from Lakeshore on that.
Logistically,
Okay.
how are you gonna do that? take everybody's toters from their houses and keep like pull them, take them to.
Yeah, I mean, that part of the study is way smaller than the data set that we're using.
Okay, so you're not using the full one.
Yeah, we can't. And Lakeshore and Joy said, you're gonna pretty much like see what the issue is based on a handful.
How big
Yeah.
is the full sample size?
So we're doing 40 samples per route, and there's 8 routes. So for 2 consecutive weeks. So we're gonna have, double the data. So, and that was just based off of what we think, or how we can stay ahead of the trucks, we think. So.
I
Next
definitely-
question, I don't know if you would be able to answer this, but there's the informal recycling, right? The guy that drives his truck around and picks up the metal and stuff. Do we have any sense the level of that activity, and how much is actually recycled through that process?
I don't, other than the fact that we almost never, I don't think I've ever had a complaint where we had to go pick up a white good or, so they're out there.
There's a guy that drives his truck, it's maybe once a week comes through, and it's pretty reliable, so I can put something metal out there.
Yeah.
It'll be gone really quickly. They're quite good.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering how much, if there's any sense of that activity, or whether that's even on the radar to.
I think,
That's a great question.
I don't know.
They're certainly active.
Yeah.
I know, like in
Yeah.
our neighborhood, it's more stuff that, like, he takes like old air conditioners and like,
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah, I
like
mean,
that,
we
like-
never get a fly dump complaint about metal. So
Yeah.
it's just- it's
If
good.
you've got a
It's
heavy
fortunate.
metal object, you put it in your alley. somebody
Yeah.
will come.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I flagged him down a couple times. It was like, wait.
Yeah.
Garage.
I was just gonna say.
When
I
is
think
this starting?
Well, all the data, I got the data to Lakeshore today. They're using the data points that we pulled randomly to then put a stop number by it. So it's a tedious process because we, again, staying ahead of each truck takes a lot of thought. And then we're going to be doing next week, Monday, Tuesday. We skip Wednesday because we don't have any recycling, Thursday, Friday, and then we do it again the second week. So.
I wish-
And it's going to finish by the end of the semester because it has to. So they're graduate students that have to finish it. So
I'm sorry, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Let's say my toter's out there and then you take it, do you put replacement?
we're going to just be, I've got giant clear garbage bags.
Oh, you're just gonna
Yeah.
put it in the bag
Mhm.
and then
Yeah,
put the address on there?
People don't know if they're part of this thing,
right.
unless they're happy to see.
Yes, there's a,
Yeah.
right. And the nice thing about pulling in the random addresses, we have the gamut of addresses in the town. Like, I'm confident that we're getting a broad brush of the town in this, so.
On the radio. My track.
Cool. Well, it sounds pretty.
I was just gonna say, I think it's kind of an interesting thing that we are going to be doing this, because I just noticed that I kind of every so often just take a look around at what communities are doing in our general vicinity. I'm always kind of curious. And I noticed in their newsletter, kind of the Skokie equivalent, they'd mentioned, I think they are doing, I don't know if it's quite exactly like this, but it sounds like it's something similar where they're kind of taking a look at this sort of contamination, this issue. So I think it's interesting that we will be doing it, and hopefully there's a lot of valuable info to be gained from it.
One cumulative comment. So if you look at a bin and you decide how full it is,
Mhm.
if someone has a lot of cardboard and they don't collapse their boxes, it'll look more full than.
Yeah.
do. So I think if there's a way to weigh the bags, and if you do a transplant later and weigh it, that might be more useful.
We're going to do more of that on the contamination, and we just don't have the manpower to kind of do it differently for the study. But we've talked about doing weights for the contamination study, but when contamination is a plastic bag, that doesn't really work. And so Joy, the sustainability corner, she's gonna help us out on how to quantify it in a way where it's at least apples to apples for every container. So,
When I did it, I used the stick.
Oh,
It
okay.
worked really well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. We could just put some marks on a stick or something. Yeah. Okay.
But even weight doesn't really give you necessarily an accurate,
No, it's not, it would be volume.
okay, even like weight. because you're-
Yeah, initially,
What
yeah.
Bob was saying, because,
Mhm.
but even if you have it, like if you have glass and you have it just fill this high, it would be heavy. Or if
Right.
you've got strawberry containers, they're light, but you can fill the whole thing.
And ultimately, I would argue that we're most concerned about the volume and the container size and things like that. So I think volume is the way to go. So, yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay, next on our agenda is future role of SEAC and the new sustainability plan in the development review process, which sounds like a loaded statement, because I think it is. So this is something that has come up. Something that we've talked about for a while, but kind of has come up recently in light of the discussion and board action around the Amazon development. Before we talk about the first part of the sentence, I'd like to ask a couple questions of either Max or Liz on the second part of the sentence. There was some talk at the last board meeting on the sustainability plan, the next sustainability plan. And, obviously we've been talking about it for a while. Earlier in the year, when we started meeting again, we're trying to figure out how to get to that next plan. We sort of put that on hold because we were waiting for the results of the greenhouse gas inventory, and then also because Delta could potentially be involved in preparing the plan. So we're not exactly sure on our role in the plan preparation itself. The last time the plan was put together, the situation was very different. We had that class, there's a grad class that was involved. Obviously, there was it was a lot of staff involved, and we didn't write the plan. We were involved in looking at it and giving our input. So long-winded way to ask my question is there an expectation? It sounded like there was an expectation that we were supposed to have this plan, up and running by January, which, maybe had we been started working on it when we started meeting again, but that wasn't feasible because of the things we've been doing, we were just talking about. So will be good to get expectations out there for what we're supposed to be doing. And also because we're not writing this plan, staff writes the plan, we go back and forth, but ultimately it's staff writing the plan. Guys, at least that's how I have to. So maybe you can shed some light on it.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of answers to that question. Certainly the work that Delta is doing is being looked at, I think, collectively by us. And so the us is you guys and the staff. And when we talk about the staff that does sustainability work, it's largely, it's her and me. So it's us. We've looked at the work that Delta is doing as sort of a first step in having a better understanding of what the characteristics of Skokie are like. And then the next, and very closely related to that from Delta's work, is going to be, and I think one of the reasons that we selected Delta was that Delta did not come in and say, we're going to do a GHG audit and say, here it is, and here's some graphics, and this is what Skokie is. Thank you. Have a nice day. I think one of the things that we liked about Delta's approach was that Delta said, we're going to come in and we're going to do this GHG emissions inventory, and then we're going to say, so what does this mean? And in the context of Skokie and being a Chicago firm and knowing a little bit about Skokie, what does this suggest to you that you should be thinking about as next steps in terms of the evolution of a strategy? What does this suggest to you? And I think so we look at that as setting sort of the basis for what makes sense for us then, since we'll have that baseline information as we begin to then think about, strategies and setting up targets and goals for how we want to begin to take actions in this next plan. At the same time, you may recall, going back to March or whatever it is, we resumed meeting and started talking about having Delta do this work. We had a very deliberate discussion at that time about, should we, the village, spend money on a greenhouse gas emissions inventory for the village and spend that time understanding what Skokie's unique characteristics are, or might it be more important to focus our time, efforts, and energies on sort of the fact that we are part of a broader region which has other regional activities going on, and I'll use the expression, is that the best use of our time and money versus what Metro Mayors is doing. And so we made, as you'll recall, the decision that it's a goal of ours in the 2016 to 21 plan to do this for Skokie. And so we collectively made the decision that that's what we wanted to do. And we wanted to do one for Skokie. And we didn't want to skip that step. And we didn't just want to rely on whatever Metro Mayors was doing. Now, of course, there's some interest in, well, let's make sure we're not discounting what Metro Mayors is doing. And that's important. We are part of a region, and that work is out there and it's available to us. I think another reason that we ended up selecting Delta, because Delta's been involved in that work. They're very familiar with that work. And so Delta will have a good understanding of how our work and what we're interested in Skokie, and they understand what Skokie's about, but they also understand the work that's gone on in our immediate region. I think that's why they're a good partner for us. So that sort of, I hope, addresses sort of the Delta part of that and how it fits into what we're trying to do. Of course, we wish and hope that the answer to the development of the sustainability plan was, oh, I wish it was done in January too, but also mindful of the fact that we were asked to do something else with our time here in October and in November and December. And we had this other commitment that we were asked to undertake. And so that's certainly is going to be diverting a little bit of our time when we're, hopeful that Delta is going to be delivering a product to us by the, perhaps the end of, October, when we might be able to spend our time in November sort of delving into that and what it means. And so you'll recall that I think members of the commission spent some time in the summer trying to research some, sustainability plans from other communities to try and get a feel for what sort of models and what sort of plans we might be interested in, using that as a basis for our work. So, there's a lot that goes into that. I wish I could give you a more direct answer to, I think we should be able to do it by X date, but I think as we all sit here in this room and we know, we have a lot of work to do to get there.
I agree. I just want to, I guess, the impression I got from watching the last village board meeting was that there's this expectation that we're supposed to come up with a plan by January. And that's,
The sustainability plan.
I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to watch that meeting.
No, I watched it too, and it was very, it was watching it, it was very strong impression of the expectation is that there was something in January for to consider, which was a surprise to me. I didn't know that there was any expectation of January. I agree with Max that it's, I think we need to allow the time for Delta to do their work. I also think we need to do some deliberation as well, whether it's with Delta or with the staff or there's some other public input process, I would like to allow the time. For me, what's important is that we come up with something substantive, tangible. I think in the last plan, we've talked in various, when we do the evaluation of how we did over the year, we'd say, look, we've got ambitious, we have ambitious ideas of what we want to do. It's okay to be ambitious and not really realize the ambition, but at least to proceed and push. I think for this next round, I'd like to see us really focus in on being more substantive, tangible, and deliverable. And so that's going to take some time to work through in terms of what the priority is going to be and based on what information we have and what is feasible for the village to do specifically. We have some good guidelines now, or good models to work with. The mayor's caucus put out a very a vision for sustainability for the region, and I think is a good starting point. The city of Naperville put out a very ambitious plan, which I think is a good model to work from in terms of what we want to do. I think we just have to evaluate that in terms of what we're prepared to do and what we're prepared to deliver on. But I'd like to see us. I'd like to see us be ambitious with that, but at the same time, I'd like us to have some teeth. It's like this is a commitment we are willing to make, and we're willing to proceed for, and these are the specific goals and expectations that we'd like to see do. And if it takes us into the middle of next year, maybe the goal should be by the next fiscal year. So when the village is looking at budget, that we have a plan that aligns with that budget year, and when the village can plan according to that.
Yeah, we early in the year, it seemed like as a commission, we came to the consensus that we're waiting on Delta, and that we're not going to push out a plan until that happens, and so that's going to change our timeline. So it would we want the board and the mayor and the manager's office and whomever else to understand that, because January is not. It's not going to happen, especially if we're trying to put together something on waste reduction on that timeline. There's no way to get control of that. Lisa?
Yeah, maybe the trustees that are here can enlighten me on something. I was confused by the discussion about the Amazon property. It seemed like, and maybe I didn't understand it, but it seemed like the feeling was that until we come out with a new plan, the environment is not going to factor into decisions made by the board. And I'm looking right here under air quality for the sustainability commission, for the sustainability plan that's current. And it literally says review land use decisions for how they may impact air quality. And it seemed like when a trustee brought it up, he was shut down by saying that we're not supposed to be considering the environment. And I'm just confused, and it's making me worried that if we don't come up with a new plan, that all these months are going to roll by and their environment's not going to be considered in any of these decisions. So I'm just trying to figure out, what is it about the old plan that is not being used right now? And what is it going to be about the new plan that's going to make it used? Or if the trustees could just correct me on the whole process and just say, I misunderstood what happened. Because that was the perception that I got, is that our plan is not relevant to land use decisions. The environment's not relevant. And I'm looking right at the plan, and it talks about it being taken into consideration.
Kim, you want to, or should I?
Go first if you want.
I'm going to try to answer your question, Lisa. If if it's okay.
Yes, thank you.
When we did the study for the Amazon property, the air quality was considered. Their alternate site was 2 blocks away in the neighboring town. I think it's Niles. So I construed, for one, I'm just going to talk for myself, that the air quality issue would have been the same no matter what. So I wanted what was best for Skokie. And in my interpretation, not as an air quality, but as an economic stimulus, that the Amazon project was the thing that was best for Skokie. If I turned it down, it would go 2 blocks away and I would have the same air considerations. So
Okay, so I appreciate that. I'm not asking for like the specifics of this particular project, but I see what you're saying about the air quality. But it seemed to me, from my perspective, watching the meeting, that it seemed like some trustees didn't, including the mayor, maybe didn't think it was relevant. And you're saying that you looked at it, but it was just a perception that I have, and I'm glad to hear that from your perspective, it was relevant. You looked at the air quality.
I think everybody really did.
Okay.
But let me say one other thing. We are still, this is new territory, air quality as far as development. So we're all walking on eggshells right now. And the thing about this commission is we are looking for them for guidance. And when the gentleman asks, do we take their recommendation? Of course. Who else's recommendation are we going to take? You know, when it comes to air quality and sustainability. So we are looking for this, and we are looking for specific, at least I am. Let me not say we, let me say me. We are looking for specific things for you to guide us in this. And yes, we do follow the recommendations of our commissions. Every meeting we hear a commission report. Planning is a good example. And you guys, when it comes to sustainability, are the pros from Dover. So who else are we going to listen to? We're waiting on you. At least I am. I'm sorry for the we, okay? I am waiting on you. So yes, that's why I'm sitting here listening. And I think you guys, are doing great so far, except when you knock the board, then you're not doing so good.
No, I hope you understood my question.
I did. Did I answer it?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, we're not told all the specific projects. We're not asked to weigh in on any of them, which is why we have the plan. And so when all the decisions are made, the plan is like this big umbrella for, well, are we taking this into consideration? And from my perspective, the discussion made it seem like, well, this is not relevant. The environment's not relevant to this discussion, and we have to wait for guidance in the next plan. That was what I heard. So that was just, I didn't understand it. I was very confused.
Okay, well, like I just can reiterate what I said is yes, we are taking it into, I am taking it, I got to get my pronouns right. I am taking it into consideration. I know Kim is also, but you also got to remember, sustainability is not new. It's just growing. It's just getting more legs. It's just impacting us all more. So this is, we are looking at it, and we have to, and as you have pointed out, we have to start looking at it harder and with more impact. So yes, we are looking at it. That I can, I am looking at it, and I'm sure Kim is too.
Well, we have you here now, and I'm glad that you're here, and maybe you'll learn, you guys will, it'll be more on people's radar. That would be great.
All right. Can I say one more thing before I take up any more of your time? Kim and I are here to help you. We're not here to give you input. We are here to help you in any way. And if there's any help you need in any area, and if we can, we will do it. All you have to do is ask. And like this area, you want to know about the board meeting? Yes. But we are not going to give input on this.
And we also like to hear in the past with the Randy Roberts, who was our representative, he also helped us get some information as to what you guys are thinking and to how your thinking process works, and things that you're, different ways that you're going, things like, well,
do you want us to report that back to you? We will.
Personally, I like it. Ask
How about the
um,
rest of the board? Is that what they want? If I can get, we can give you a, how the board is leaning. Would you want to hear that?
It's certainly helpful. It helps us know if we're spinning our wheels or.
Okay.
One of the things that Randy was really good at is giving us a sense of what the other voices are and what they're hearing from other parts of the village. And I think that was enormously informative for us. Because there are diverse constituencies. I mean, there's a lot of valid points of view, a lot of different perspectives. We don't necessarily see all of them. I think part of our role is, providing to you some of the perspective from where we see things and our involvement in the community. And obviously the board has input from a broad range of people in the community. So that kind of exchange is very constructive and very helpful to have. Randy was really good about that. So yes, Ralph, to your question, if there are things, we're talking about things and we're way off in left field, it's helpful to say you guys are really out of, you guys are off in left field.
I was gonna say, that's exactly what Randy would say,
Yeah.
he would re-listen and say, look,
Right.
this is what's realistic, right? Achieve here.
You're not gonna get very far with that one. You just flat out say it.
All right, we'll be glad to do it, won't we, Kim?
Yes, of course. So I just want to add my piece in there as well, to the question. The Amazon vote was a difficult vote because I did take into consideration the environmental impact of the arguments, not only around environment, around labor, around traffic, safety, all of those concerns that came up. And I think what it really came down to was, in the planning review process, there are things that are very specific. When we evaluate a new development that comes in, I think the current process is flawed because it wasn't specific enough in terms of how we measure environmental impact. And that was the missing piece. And I think that's what I'd like to see coming out of the sustainability plan, is being specific about how we measure that. And it doesn't have to be in the planning process itself, it could be in other areas of the village itself, so it's much more comprehensive and not limited to just new development. It was something that was really hard to go back and say, this is how we're going to hold Amazon accountable, because we didn't have anything specific to hold them accountable to without having those things defined. And so that was the challenge with that. So with the new sustainability plan, I'd like to see something more specific in terms of how we build staff into the process, just like we did with everything else in terms of like environmental health or other beautification. Like, these are things like checklist things that were part of the plan review process. And I know that Matt is, having some considerations of how that process is done, but we want to make sure that there is an investment in every single new development that comes forward, that environmental impact is part of that as well. And it is more substantive, right? It was just hard to hold Amazon accountable to that when we haven't defined that yet. So that was the challenge. And with that being said, I don't think we necessarily have to wait for the new sustainability plan. I think there's certain conversations that can happen now leading up to that. And one of the things, the idea that's been floating around is looking at those best practice models, whether it's Naperville or Highland Park, or engaging in those conversations that we haven't already to understand what they're already doing and building up on that, and how that fits within the village itself, right? And then just really quickly, in terms of providing feedback about why the board is asking SEAC to review refuse, is that when we're looking at the budget this year, we were really going back and forth with whether or not to go to once a week garbage pickup. And we felt like we weren't in a place where we could make that decision this year, but it's something that we'd like to consider. But before we get there, we'd like to know what that impact is going to be on the community, and making sure that we have alternative ways that we can reduce waste so that we can help modify behavior before we start charging people or taking that twice a week garbage pick away. Let's make sure we have strategies in place to educate, inform, and promote that on how we redirect waste so that we can we may or may not consider doing once a week garbage pickup versus twice, a week, right? So these are things that we would want SEAC to take its time to invest in and give us a recommendation in terms of how do we help reduce waste, so that we can get to a point where we may consider that.
So I have a question about the first item that you were talking about. You were saying that you didn't feel like you had, the capacity to address this within the current framework or current structure, and that's something that you want to reflect in the new sustainability plan. Is it going to be enough to put it in the plan, or does it need to become part of the village code?
There's things that have to be put in practice as well, right? So that's built into the process where not just the road decisions will come to SEAC, but there is a staff review process where a staff member would provide input on those new developments and saying, we've gone through the checklist of X, Y, Z, and this either meets our expectations or we have some concerns. So at least the board is aware that, there's a baseline, how we're gauging them in terms of environmental impact, and then we can go back and saying, okay, the planning commission is going to make whatever recommendation they're going to make ultimately, but at least you can have in there the perspective of where the potential environmental impact could be for that new development, for instance, right? We just want to have more stuff to that so that we know how to measure and hold this accountable.
I think that's not gonna be just in the plan. If the plan doesn't have that level of detail, that's. No, I mean, that's, no, right, it's not going to, that's. The plan will, like the old plan, but maybe in more detail, stress it more that it will, that community development will have guidelines. But that these guidelines will actually be part of the review process as opposed to just the fluff language, maybe it's in the last one. I mean, the current plan as it stands does not prohibit the planning department from having implemented guidelines. They weren't. So yes, you are right that there were not, by making the decision based on guidelines that weren't there, you would be on the fly, deciding things for the standards that Amazon wouldn't have known what they were coming into it. But the comments made were that the plan as it stands, we can't do it under the plan. Basically, like there's no plan, and we have to wait. What Lisa was saying, that we have to wait for this new plan,
And then have to wait for a new plan.
you're right, but comments not made by you at the board meeting, but comments made at the meeting were that we need to wait for this new plan to come out. We can't even discuss, we can't even table we have to table the discussion, but even more than table the discussion on implementing standards because we don't have our new plan yet. But the actual standards aren't coming from us. And so those can happen. That's staff.
Right, and that's something that the staff has to review. I actually have a meeting scheduled with the village manager next week to sit down and kind of flesh out what we can do now so that we don't have to wait until when the plan is out. So I do agree with you that we don't have that clarity. And we need to be able to empower the staff to be able to make these decisions. And right now, they're not in a place where they can do that, and we haven't defined it. So
Yeah, but there's language in the current plan. If you're saying you need some sort of, we'll call it statutory type of authority to put forth those guidelines, the current plan doesn't. It's maybe not as strong of language, but it's there to give staff the go ahead to.
But it's
start
not built
building.
into the current processes.
No,
the way we want it to
right,
be.
but there's enough there
Right.
for staff to start working on those guidelines.
Yeah, I'm not.
To then-
disagreeing with you, though. Yeah,
Make something that.
There's nothing to stop the staff or anybody from incorporating those general goals into the development review process.
No,
It just
that's
didn't
something that has
happen.
never happened.
And we also passed a complete streets ordinance. And frankly, the execution of that has been pretty So I think, yes, we go back and forth, like there wasn't anything specific to evaluate it. That to me is a problem. That's not the answer. That's the problem. And so, when we're looking at the next plan, if the village is taking sustainability seriously, then we will have a plan that will have very specific goals as has been outlined in the mayor's caucus and some other municipalities for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing vehicle miles traveled. And then the expectation will be that will be drilled down into policies and decisions that actually make that happen. And that's where I think we need to be pointed in terms of where we need to go.
We also have to hold ourselves accountable, though, because in our old plan, we did have a goal, getting the village to update codes, standards, ordinances. We have that in our plan. Did we achieve that? No. We did not achieve that. Was it reasonable to expect the staff would pick that up on their own and just pick it all on with it? Probably not. So we got to hold ourselves accountable to that too. Did our plan go into the detail of the development review process? No. I think we need to make sure we pick up on that this time. And I'm glad that the trustees are willing to take a look at this and commit that they want to incorporate codes and standards changes to consider environmental review. I do have a question about Delta. Are they the kind of company that can help research what villages can adopt in terms of standards and guidelines for environmental review of whatever? I don't know if that's their expertise, because I don't know if we all have the expertise to know what can the village adopt in terms of standards.
Yeah, I can reach out to them. Certainly, they're on my radar for at least giving us a quote and some information on what the feasibility of them maybe working on our plan with us, since they have now a really good background with our greenhouse gas inventory. As Max said, we specifically chose them because they're so familiar with the area. They certainly know the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus and that plan. They're very familiar with it. I know that they know the other communities that are coming out with these plans. And so they're certainly familiar with those metrics. I just don't know. I just don't know much on the community development end. So I'd have to research that more. It's just not what I do from day to day. So
I was just gonna sort of, anyone interrupt, but I was gonna say, if I can interject for a moment, I think to sort of piggyback on and reiterate some of what has been said, like it's my personal feeling anyway, that although that's not where sort of the solution, the comprehensive solution where it starts and ends, I definitely think it's imperative, and I guess that I presume that was part of the plan also, in the next version of the sustainability plan, to explicitly have an economic development section, because when I was reviewing other communities' plans, I noticed that one in the nearby area, one of the nearby communities had that, and I thought that was particularly important, and that was kind of before this whole thing had come up or come to our attention. And I feel like, in my opinion anyway, the whole thing with the Amazon development and all of that, I think it just kind of emphasized the need for an economic development section in the plan, which was kind of obviously not specifically, there was no section in the plan before, even though a lot of these, I think there were some goals, objectives that did relate to it. But yeah, it would be good to have a more explicit part to that.
So if we work on that, and this is kind of a question I had in general, is, Max, you were saying that sustainability in the village is really you and Liz. But if we do start incorporating other things like public health or economic development, how is that, like, then that sort of presupposes that we're going to have to work with other departments within the village. And I guess I wanted to hear from the two of you, like, your thoughts on that. Because in some ways, like, if we do develop this plan and there are portions that, relate to other departments in the village, then is the expectation going to be that they are willful participants, right? And that they have the capacity to participate in incorporating the items in this plan, right?
I'm gonna let Max take that one.
Why does she get the fun questions? Sure, the expectation is that they'll participate, yes. I mean, as you'll, well, Emily, you won't recall, since you've only been on the commission for a short period of time, but those who are around for Sustainability Plan 1 will recall, you know, the health department and Board of Health were very involved in that. And so, as was community development. We, you know, we had talked months ago, at least internally, and maybe a little bit with this group, about what role, if any, the Board of Health would play, for example, in this next iteration of the sustainability plan. And I would say that's still an open question, but you know, Mike Charlie, the village's health director, as you all know, since the day he arrived in the village, has been consumed by, you know, the COVID response. And so Mike just doesn't really have the time to be much involved with this, and who can say at this point in time what, you know, how the COVID curve is going to look and what's around the bend for that. And community development, you know, certainly needs to have some sort of role, as you've all discussed for the last, you know, 20 to 25 minutes or so. There's a huge interplay there, and the economic development function in the village falls underneath the umbrella of community development. So the direct answer to your question is yes. You know, the economic development component falls within the same purview. So there's definitely a role to be played there, and sort of tying the development process and the development review process together with sustainability plan and its goals. So sure, the expectation will be that there will be willing participants. You know, my thought has always been, and I guess to tie into the theme set by Ralph Klein and with his comments earlier, these are my thoughts, these are nobody else's thoughts, just mine. You know, I see, you know, us as really being the drivers of the plan, and we'll need to bring those people along. I mean, as I think you all know, you know, we've had a number of longtime division chiefs in the various parts of the community development department have departed in the last year. You know, Terry Olean's gone, Nate Kriska's gone. So there's been some staffing rollover in the community development department. And so we'll probably be driving the bus on development of the sustainability plan, but nonetheless, yeah, you know, they're expected to be participants in this process as well. You know, what role any of the other boards or commissions might play, I don't know. I mean, I think we will be the ones that need to drive that, and sort of be the ones to step up and say, I think what we feel like we need from them.
As far as, there's not really an answer to this, but as far as the role of SEAC in terms of board decisions, you mentioned you looked at the planning commission or these other commissions reports. We don't have a defined, planning commission is involved. There's a pathway. They have a defined role. We don't have a defined role in a lot of things. So the problem has been on issues that we, over time, you know, over the years, there's been issues that we as a commission or some commission members have thought that we should have been involved in. We've not been at all. And not that we have either the time or the expertise to weigh in on all of these things, but it's often, it just kind of sounds like lip service to say that we're, you know, board looks to us, but you know, when, you know, on the changing of recycling and waste reduction, yes, but that is one of that's maybe the only thing that I can think of where we've been asked by the board, other than, I don't know if over the years we've been asked how to increase recycling, but that's kind of more of a manager's office thing. This is the only thing I can ever think of that's been we've been asked by the board to get involved in something. We've never been asked to advise the board on it. We've always tried to advise the board, like it's come up versus come down. So I guess that's why the public doesn't really know of our role. I think a lot of people are here, are not sure. I don't know if there's an answer to that, but that's just my 2 cents.
I mean, I wonder if the sustainability plan might be an opportunity to, like, I wonder with something like the Amazon project, if in the sustainability plan, there's a comment about environmental impact, I think that part of the development process had to include environmental impact. And if the environmental impact is going to be significant enough, then it would trigger a review by us or cooperation between us and the planning commission. I have no idea if that's the thing to
I mean, we don't have the expertise, but that's where staff
You said
is
exactly
supposed
what
to
I
do.
was So.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
at least
define
as,
what
Yeah,
at least as some
but that's not
questions,
enough.
right?
They need something subjective and a set of standards and guidelines that they
Well,
can
there
go
would
by.
be, there would be a
It's
set
the
of,
same thing each time there's a review.
No,
but
absolutely.
maybe if
100%.
after,
I'm talking about the bar.
if they've gone through those type standards and there's still, then staff still thinks,
You can define what significant is.
well, like
and
with
how
this-
that gets triggered.
Yeah, I mean, you're
then
looking
at that point, then, because we shouldn't be involved in planning decisions that's not.
Well, we can certainly make recommendations, right? We
Right.
could certainly, we
If
could
it's
certainly.
something that
say-
rises to the level of,
Yeah.
this is a big decision, there are significant. If I would say, like, if there's a finding of this has a significant environmental impact, then.
Yeah.
One additional thing that the board can consider is, an opinion or a report or something from SEAC in addition to plan. Not that,
Oh, 100%. In
Right.
addition to.
so it's only if,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like,
That's when we come into play or something. But that only, that's just looking at planning decisions. There are other decisions that
Yeah.
we've been left out of there.
Yeah, it
Land
definitely
use.
should not be limited to just planning. It should be.
Yeah, I mean, that's just an example. 'Cause it's, current.
Yeah, but I mean, these are important things that we can maybe, but just because it's in the plan doesn't mean that. They'll have- But yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just give another example of things that go on about, for example, water? And we've had Deborah Shore years back come talk to us about how when you keep building on the land and there's problems with water runoff, and it can be very harmful to the environment. And one of the things that many years ago, right when this plan came into action, the water subcommittee of this commission, we tried to look at Florida area ratios, and we just didn't have the experience to understand these building codes and things like that. But one of the things we do know is that there's a reason, for example, these Florida area ratios, but that people are constantly getting variances. And that's where sustainability needs to come into play when they go in front of the zoning board and they ask for a variance on zoning because they want to build, a large house on a little postage stamp of a property, and they're just allowed. And there's so many, I think it's called variance. There's so many variances granted. We have some great laws already, or some great ordinances, zoning ordinances already on the books. And what we would like to see is some of these commissions taking things into consideration, like like saying, no, this is going to be too big. We have, stop just handing out variances for building just because you want a bigger house, just because you grew your family. Like, that's not good for the environment. There's bigger houses in Skokie, go buy one. These are the tough decisions that have to be made, instead of just handing out variances like it's just okay. So it's just one example of one of the things that, we already have some things built in, great laws, great ordinances, great rules, but in practice, the environment is not considered in the process.
Yeah, just to answer your question, Lisa, from somebody who was chairman of the zoning board for 15 years, you made me go down memory lane. The biggest variance I think ever given on FAR was 3%. And the amount of variances given on FAR are very few. Because not only FAR, but also for the permeable, impermeable. So the zoning board has always been mandated to watch the water runoff because that is an issue in Skokie. So I just want to let you know that there's not a lot of variances given. I was up until this year the liaison for zoning too, and there's very few given for variances given for FAR. So just to set the record straight. Sorry.
Okay, given the time, I think we could, anyone have anything else they want to add? Okay, great. Our next meeting is October 26th, as we are aware. Liz, do you have any public comments?
No.
Okay, motion to adjourn? Great. I want to turn off YouTube.
Thanks, Ralph, for coming. Good to hear from you, and thanks, Kim, as well.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And let us know if there's anything you need from us.
And
I mean,
if
that's
you're not on the board too much, you're more than welcome to punch back. That's fine.
I think you did.
Hey, Liz, we're still on YouTube.
Bye, Zoom.